You're a contributor to the Daily Beast, and you wrote about what's going on with the youth vote specifically. Like, I think there's been a ray of hope in all this darkness, which is,
Mm-hmm.
hey, Gen Z is going to be a massive force to be reckoned with. Watch out. Like them, you legislating against drag queens and, like allowing it, making it even easier to get a gun. Like none of this is resonating.
Yep.
It'll backfire. But, as you wrote about, not unless the vote is suppressed. So let's just talk about youth voting in general. Like, why is it hard when you're a new young voter, you turn 18? Why is it hard to vote in this country?
Yeah, no, so that's a really good question. And the reason why I kind of decided to delve into this was kind of personal experience. Before I started working at the ACLU, a couple of years before, I was a voting rights organizer in upstate New York at the college I went to. So prior to the 2016 election, I was helping register students to vote, and I found that it was so difficult. You'd meet someone and they were like really excited to vote and really wanted to, first time voting, and the forms were really confusing. And also the idea of the address that they would put would be like a debate that I remember sitting around with at the time an attorney that was working with our group, and we were trying to figure out what address they should put. Because if you think about it, you're a kid in college, you want to put the address you're living at. You could put the dorm address,
Right.
or you could put the PO box where like you get your mail,
Right.
or you could put like the main campus address of where the college is. But technically, the address where your dorm is shared with like, upteen people. So that's not your real address technically. So your PO box could technically also be considered your address because that's where you get mail. That's not actually where you live.
Right.
So it's a really confusing process for a lot of kids, because if you're trying to figure out if you want to vote in a new place, the address is a difficulty. And then your ID, if you move to new school, you likely haven't changed your ID because that process is so difficult. I think, as we all know, the DMV and changing your address and getting a new ID is really difficult. So there's just a lot of different hurdles put in place
And it
for
varies
student
from
voters.
state to state, right? Because your
Mm-hmm.
ID will have to match where your current address is and all that. So it's like I think in California I've had it pretty easy, even though it is difficult here too. But also
Yeah.
I went to college in New York, so I remember that whole dance. But like, what is the right answer on that? Can you just put, or is it just varies and you have to figure out what the registration rules are in your particular state when you're at college?
Mhm. So it does vary, and I think you're gonna have to, if anyone's listening now and they're trying to figure it out, I think the what I'd recommend is on your campus there's definitely a group, or there's kind of a student-run organization that's going to help you figure out what the best address is. But it really does vary. I think that's one of the tough things, and I talk about this in the article. In Iowa, or in Idaho, they recently started banning student ID usage on voting ID forms, even though this has been used for over a decade, and they haven't had one single instance of any type of voting fraud or any type of voting issue. But you know why they're banning voter IDs now is because the youth vote in Iowa is getting so high, and a lot
Right.
of political officials are concerned that they're going to lose their power.
In Idaho, and Idaho's going, I
Yeah.
mean, they're going haywire, just in general. Like it is crazy to be a Democrat in Idaho generally. Okay, so what are the tactics? You talk about a few states. Florida seems to have like a trifecta of being very afraid of their
Hmm.
youth.
Yeah, no. So I think the biggest one is limiting the usage of student IDs, and that's something that's been happening in Georgia for a while. If you in a lot of colleges you can't use a student ID unless it's run by the state. So you have students at private universities that have student IDs that they don't work, and I think we should remember that a lot of the top HBCUs in the country, where you have a lot of young Black kids, are in Georgia, and they don't have these state student IDs because those are private universities. So you're disenfranchising kids at Morehouse, at Spelman, at all these great schools, and all these kids that, really want to get involved, and their grandparents and great grandparents were fighting for the right to vote. And now they're at a school where a lot of the civil rights movements were born at these universities or colleges, and they're being disenfranchised to vote. And it's really disappointing. So I think that's really the main tactic, is
Yeah.
kind of disenfranchising students with the student IDs.
Yeah, I mean that's huge because, for example, like I went to college in New York. I didn't have a New York ID. I mean, I had a fake ID from New Jersey that I got on Bleecker Street. So there was that one. That was like my first order of business when I got to college. Like, I need that fake ID. I could be from Jersey, and I memorized my address. I forgot what it is now, but no. But like the real thing is, I never had a New York State ID ever. I voted in New York, but I could vote with my student ID. Like I could vote. There's many different ways I could vote, but I didn't have the New York State ID. So like, but so you rescind that, and you're just disenfranchising hundreds of thousands of people.
Mm-hmm. And this is what Republicans have done for so long. You know, we saw this in the civil rights movement. We saw it in the 60s with the Voting Rights Act, really trying to put little things in places so people couldn't vote, so it'd be harder for people to vote. Things like poll tests, these really arduous restrictions that are really unnecessary. And it's always targeted at groups that Republicans think that are going to vote against them and vote them out of office. So
Yes.
I wrote this because I hope that a lot of people that read it, whether they're, young voters or whether they're, older people, but really do see how a lot of these attacks on our democracy are dangerous, can really, kind of just watch what's happening and vote out the politicians in Florida and these states that are putting out these dangerous policies.
Yes. And one of those people who like, I mean, this whole clip is insane, but I just want to ask you who Cleta Mitchell is, and then play a little clip from this leaked audio.
Cool. Yeah.
So who is she?
Cleta. So if I could basically describe her in short term, I want you to think of like any villain superhero movie you've watched, and Trump is the main bad guy, and then there's like these little like henchmen that run behind the villain and like carry out their bidding, and they're really most of the time awfully bad at it because they really don't know what they're doing. And that is Cleta, basically. Every time she's gone to court, she's lost for the most part, and she was one of the main people that was trying to advise Trump on how to basically take over the election in 2020. Like, what were the best strategies legally that he could use to basically flip the results his way? And of course, she was the worst henchman ever because he was not successful. But yeah, she was the main lawyer. She's one of the main lawyers behind the 2020 January 6th event.
And again, that's saying a lot considering the cast of ghouls, inept ghouls who are trailing him and trying to make that all happen at the Four Seasons Landscaping Company. But here she is talking. And do you know what meeting this is? Is it a... I'm not sure exactly where this audio is from. So
this is so different Republican groups every year, they have a couple different retreats. And this is one of the conservative super PACs that Trump is closely aligned with, and DeSantis also. And they're in a yearly retreat, and they met to talk about, what was their plan going into the next presidential election around voting rights. And it's like, how do we make sure that we have less turnout? Because for them, their version of democracy works best when the least amount of people vote. So is that this, Republican conference where they really wanted to try to put their ideas in place. And it's thankful that we had a journalist that was able to uncover this audio recording.
Yeah. This is just a small snippet, so you can tell us what else is in it. But here she is talking about how terrible it is that college students vote.
So we need to be looking at what are these college campus locations in polling. What is this young people effort that they do? They basically put the polling place next to the student dorm, so they just have to roll out of bed, and go back to bed.
We need to look at what they're doing with these young people. It's like, organizing them, talking to them about the issues.
They're just paying attention. That's
yeah. I don't know. Allowing them to vote, helping set up. So that's the other thing, is a lot of people have been able to vote on campus. And that, I know, in a number of states is going away. And she's sort of speaking to that.
Yeah. And I think an example of that was in Wisconsin. There was a state Supreme Court race. And really at the center of this race became abortion and reproductive justice issues. And the Wisconsin Democratic Party smartly organized and really partnered with the Secretary of State and different government entities to make sure that students had the right to vote. And this now, after that election, because students at many universities in Wisconsin came out in droves to support candidates that were, pro-abortion, pro-democracy. Ultimately, the conservative candidates lost. And I talk about this in my article, but former Governor Scott Walker, many times failed presidential candidate, came out and was just like, we have to figure out something with young people. And it was really wild because he could have said, you know what, like maybe there's an area we can compromise with young people. Or maybe we can find something that we like, but instantly went straight to voting and changing the way they vote, which just shows you that for them, again, democracy is best for them when the least amount of people vote.
Yeah. And you know what, to me, and I say this to my younger self, I say this to my 20-year-old self, my 19-year-old self, who is like, the two-party system is bullshit. They're all the same, voting is, whatever. I always voted. I never abstained. But I was very much, I think there's a lot of once you sort of understand how corrupt and similar the two-party corporate system is, you get disenchanted and you don't want to participate in that.
Mhm.
But then if this can be a galvanizing, sort of moment for young folks to understand that they don't want you to vote, do it because it pisses them off, because they're ultimately afraid of you. And yeah, we need better candidates and we will get better candidates and we need to run for office. But my God, if all they want is for that kid to stay in bed, bitch, at least he got up or she got up out of bed and you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
and went and voted. What else did voters do that day? That's what most people did.
Mhm.
Oh, they rolled out of bed and they went and they voted. So it's like, exactly. Like, that it's powerful because they want to take it from us.
Mhm.
And I guess my last question to you, Rotimi, is like, why not just try to appeal to young voters? Why not try to give them their pitch on why they should vote Republican?
Well, I think the GOP realizes that their ideas are outdated and they're not popular.
Yeah.
Even
They
if you
realize they're terrible.
Yeah, no, I really think they do, because even if on the rare moments where I watch Fox News, they'll run a poll where they'll be like, oh, what percentage of Americans support any type of gun control? And it's over 50%. And the host has to like even admit that like our own polling team has found that the majority of Americans support these progressive ideas. They support ideas like universal health care. They support ideas like gun control. They support ideas like everyone having access to abortion. And yet, they just don't want to change their mind. And since they, are held by corporations and by this really like kind of hyped up conservative activist space that's making them make decisions, they have to resort to voter suppression because they know that they can't change any of their policy positions.
Right. They're too much. They're too big of cowards. And they ultimately are like, well, my billionaire sugar daddies wouldn't want this. I don't need more votes as long as I can. A vote suppressed is a vote gained in their mind.